Hello, everyone. I am so pleased to see you today. And I just want to start by sharing. I feel right now that my heart is just overflowing with so much gratitude. There's been such beautiful feedback around the free masterclass that we just had. And also, yesterday, I was in one of the final sessions in a container that I'm in right now called the Breakthrough Experience, which was this healing container that I hosted. And it was so beautiful, kind of witnessing all of the women and participants that are in there who have really just come into their own in such different ways. And I think when we started the container, there's almost like a cerebral expectation of what needs to change and where it needs to go. And one of the fun things I say fun things in the work is there's this kind of butting heads almost sometimes, where this impatience comes in or this like push or this need to be somewhere, this feeling of like, okay, all of that's great, but how do I fix this? Or how, do I move forward? And I feel like a huge theme in this container was just bringing in so many different ways. That's the fun for me, is just bringing people back to this surrender and into this softening of what is, and to this softening of the experience that they're having. And it was interesting because as I was kind of listening to everyone's experiences, and you can feel the whole room, because it was a container that was focused around healing. In the beginning, there was, I would say, a feeling of heaviness because the invitation was to bring in, where there was wounding and where there were things to be healed. But as time went on and we moved through all these different pieces, there's just this completely new energy in the group, which is so beautiful. But I was really witnessing how each person has found this piece, this other piece of their journey. People have gone deep into somatics. People have found different mentors or different hobbies, some different career paths. Some have had changes in relationships. And for a moment, this like lower ego mind came in and was like, well, everybody needed all of these other things, and almost like this limited way of looking at it. And then it suddenly hit me, this feeling of course they've all found their thing. Of course there have been all of these different pieces that have come into their lives, because as we've kind of unlocked these pieces and their frequency has shifted, they've become a match. They've come into resonance for different things. And so they've easily found the pieces in their life that are meant for them, that are more of a match for who they are. And it's so funny because there's this like push and pull, push and pull, push and pull. And then each person, I feel like, in their own way, surrendered to the surrender, and in that surrender just found the most beautiful and unexpected things, and pieces and things came into their life. And I just want to so deeply reflect that back to you and all of us. It's for me as well, that this softening and this surrender is so often the portal to what we desire and what we don't even know that we desire. And it's so easy to do the work to a point and then tune into this frequency of mind that wants to fix, that wants to solve. And without realizing it, we sort of take ourselves out of the surrender, and we go, yeah, but I did surrender and then I went to fix. But that's not surrender. And yeah, there's just almost this, I want to say, beautiful softening into who you are, in the sense of like, and I really saw this in the participants. It's like they didn't actually know where they needed to go or what they needed until they allowed themselves to experience that level of surrender. And it was almost like they still didn't know intellectually until they could see it in hindsight, right? It's like almost like as they softened into this softened expression of who they are. It was like the thing came into their life and then their energy would change. And that was one of the most fun things, for me, is to feel like, oh, your energy feels so different today. It feels like this is happening, or it feels like that's happening, or what's going on. And, people would share, oh, I had this experience. And it's almost like in the reflection on it, that's when we realize, oh, that's what I needed. That's how important it was. And you sort of start to realize that all of this mental dance of trying to figure it out, trying to deconstruct this intellectual interpretation, almost gets you nowhere. In some ways, it takes us backwards because we're just taking ourselves away from surrender. And that's not to say that there's not tremendous value in discernment and understanding and structures that are supportive to our beingness. But I think that's the essence of that. It's the structure that comes from our being is the right structure for us, not the one that we try to force ourselves into. So I also have beautiful Janessa here today, and we sort of chatted the other day in a masterclass that I did, and I said you should come and we should have another discussion about this on Friday's live. So I'm very, very excited to invite Janessa to join me and to share this conversation with you. Hello, Janessa. Are you still there?
I am. Sorry. I'm pushing buttons and I'm like, I'm taking you off of mute. I'm turning my camera on. Nothing's working. So this, I guess, is as good as it gets for right now.
Okay. No camera. That's all good.
It's on, but it's not. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, it's all good. Everyone can hear you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, this was beautiful. I love the deepening of surrender and in past conversations, we talked about synchronicities, and I have a tattoo on my wrist
Yes.
that means surrender. So I'm like, of course, you're going to talk about surrender
Oh
today.
my goodness, of course. Of course. Oh my goodness. We love those synchronicities. They really are such, milestones and landmarkers if we let ourselves see them.
Absolutely. So you were sharing in the masterclass, and something that I feel like is really supportive of where I'm traversing. And I think it also goes hand in hand with surrender, also, is that neutrality, and you're sharing the duality within neutrality. Um, and I feel like that conversation could probably go on for a long time and be extended. But you shared some really amazing wisdom in the fact that there is duality and neutrality, and there isn't none of its powerlessness, which is something that I had picked up along my spiritual journey in the fact that
Mm.
negative emotions um, give your power away. And if you're neutral, it's powerless. And so you're really helping me rewire and come into more of my own personal empowerment with some of the concepts you've been sharing.
Oh my goodness. I love this. And I just got full body like activation from that. And I actually feel like the biggest thing that I wanted to share with you and whoever's kind of witnessing this is this deep invitation to come back to your own knowing, like above everything else. And I think there's such a beauty in mentorship, and there's such a beauty in sharing and teachers and all the things, but our soul knows best. And I think that there's things that we hear, and it's almost like we've known it our whole life. It's almost like I've always known that, but I didn't know it until you put words to it, but I've always known it. And there's other things that I feel like are constructs of the mind. And what it feels like for me is that you're journeying back into this trusting of your knowing. And I think above everything that I have to say in a moment about the neutrality, I just want to invite you back into that. Like, authority is here, knowing is here. Like, there are no greater answers outside you than the answers inside you, and to just trust your ability to feel truth and feel what's right for you. So I want to start with that.
Yeah, thank you. The inner authority is something that I have given away. a lot repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of that goes with my human design and being a projector.
Yeah.
Huge growth at Edge with reclaiming that. And
Yeah.
the impatience that comes with it's a little bit at a time. Oh, I just want it all. I just want it all back right now. Can we just, there's some part of the when you're talking about surrendering to your surrender, but then returning to that mind aspect that something needs fixed. It's like I can deal with so much discomfort in my growth, in my life circumstances, being in the surrender. And then when I get maxed out on the discomfort, that's when I go back to like the doing and the fixing and more of that masculine energy.
Mhm.
Um, and I also feel like that is when I fall from my authority as well. Because it's like, oh, well, I'm doing what I know to be true, but this isn't fast enough. So then I'm going to give my authority away and see what other people say because they probably know better than me. And my periods of time in holding my empowerment and my authority are definitely growing longer, and my ability to hold the discomfort is growing longer. But the impatience, I'm not sure if that's chilling any at all, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. So I think I love this, and I think this is where I mean, there's, like, duality in everything, you know? I think there's this almost for me, there was this missing ingredient that I recognize now so clearly, which is what I kind of consider the distilling process, right? So it's like there 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 can be this awareness that's actually, a great awareness of I actually need to learn more about this, or I have curiosity, or I don't have enough information about this thing. Let's say that's a practical, business thing. And so you sort of like go on this journey, through the wilderness of the internet or whatever, and you like learn something about this and you learn something about that and you learn. And I think it's so easy to get lost in that journey and just sort of set up shop. It's like almost get this vision of like pitching a tent in like someone else's camp and just being like, I'm just going to set up shop here because this person seems to know. And instead of this real going on this journey and then coming home and allowing yourself to kind of like distill, it's like, yay, camera, we can see you, allowing this distillation of everything that the mind has taken in and just like letting it sort of filter through knowing and letting ourselves be moved by what we come to know more deeply from what we've learned rather than what we've learned itself. um and I think there's like such a beauty in that. And I think too with, when you talk about impatience again, it's like I find a lot of the time the impatience can be this kind of projection of the mind, which really sees things in a predictable linear way. So it's like, well, X amount of time has passed, so it feels like there's going to be at least double that amount of time uh, to get where I'm going, instead of realizing like I've been building the puzzle of who I am the whole time, and at any moment an unexpected piece could fall in and there could be a kind of completion that unlocks a whole new level of possibility, of experience, of love, of abundance, of like whatever it is. And in fact, that mental projection of that linearity in a way limits that to limits what's possible to that, when in fact it's like not even true. It's like you've been getting closer every moment of every day. And yeah, in a way it's like already there and already happened. Oof, even as I like say that, I feel things getting closer in my experience.
Calling it in.
Yeah. It's like not even just calling it in, but it's like realizing that a part of it already is. Like the fact that you can already touch it with your mind and with your experience means that a part of it already exists. And if you can allow yourself to realize that, it's like it just doesn't feel so far away, and it's not so far away. Mm, and it goes back to that surrender of, like, the softening to what already is, like, softening into more of what already is, rather than, I mean, it's so simple, it's such, like, I feel like we all know this, right? It's like rather than feeling the absence of it, but yeah, this deep embodied practice, and I do think that that goes back to neutrality in this feeling of, you know, because I feel like the opposite of neutrality is like the resistance of what is. And so it's almost like we think about neutrality as being calm, maybe. Maybe that's our mind's interpretation of it. But then trying to be calm when there's emotion, that is resistance, right? So it's like the neutrality is in the flowing. I'd love if you could riff too on like what this unfolding has looked like for you, because I feel like I get a lot from it when you speak about it.
Mm. Well, in short, my husband and I have been through just having our lives completely flipped upside down. And of course, I have walked the chapter of being the victim. And then
Mhm.
I flip back to being fully responsible. Like I chose to stay, I chose to walk this path. And so I feel like my neutrality is in the middle of, what is. Like I don't have to bear the weight of the responsibility. I also don't have to bear um, the the powerlessness of being a victim. And along that way, just everything within my world has shifted. And um, things that I thought my life had been built upon truth was actually illusion, had a lot of things fall
Mm.
away. And prior to that, I thought that I had really opened up spiritually, being awakened. And this just took me to a whole nother level, but it's also taken so many physical comforts away at the same time in the growth and the evolution and the transformation that I'm really relearning a brand new normal. And that calling has been beautiful and very uncomfortable, as we can probably anyone who's been through any kind of spiritual awakening process can attest to. So just trying to find my footing in who I am in relationship, in business. I mean, it's been every aspect of my life has had a ripple effect.
Mhm. Finding who you are.
Redefining who I am. Yeah. And then also the truth, the values, the beliefs that I hold. So it's been pretty monumental. The foundation, like my foundation crumbled, and rebuilding the foundation, like more than just the foundation crumbled, but including the foundation crumbled. I think when we go through those things in life and our foundation is still solid and stays there, it's easier, quicker to rebuild, or maybe that's just a story I like to tell myself. But mine was pretty much everything, including the foundation. And so then there's all of these belief systems, such as like
Yeah.
the neutrality that we talked about the other day, that really opened me in a whole new paradigm than what I had been taught in the past. And yeah, completely redefining everything. And
Yeah.
that's not an understatement, everything.
I love that you recognize that contrast with sort of the victim and responsibility, because when you first said responsibility, I felt like almost fault, right? And I think it can feel like that sometimes, like when we're taught like you have to take self-responsibility for everything, it can feel like everything's my fault. And actually that can be a beneficial lens to look through, but ultimately that's not it. It's more like the realization that you're in a dance, with the universe. You're in a dance. You're in a dance with life. And if you've ever done like partner dance, like there's this whole unconscious communication that happens, right? It's like you get pushed and it's like you can react a bunch of ways. You can go with it. You can create resistance. You can like, you can sort of push back. You're just like in this kind of like tango. And I feel like this where all this weaves together with like neutrality and um surrender is this awareness of I'm not defined by any one moment of the dance, right? And so it's like if I go over here, and this happens, I'm just like deepening this analogy. This happens in actual partner dance, right? Like there's moments where you get off the music or you're like lose your rhythm and you're like, oh, this we lost it, but you get it back, right? And if your mind, if you're like, oh no, something's wrong and people are judging me and whatever, it's like you'll literally create a state in your body where you can no longer like listen and receive and give with the partner that you're dancing with. And it's kind of like the it's the same in life. It's like, you know, suddenly, and I don't want to diminish what you're saying because I can feel the power of it, and so many, I mean, so many people, myself included, can identify with these times of feeling like things are stripped away. But again, the mind is very activated by fear because it's based on a lot of survival mechanisms. So it can go to this place where like this is reality now, and this is what defines me, and everything before is gone. But it's not true. Like you're still in the dance, and so it's like the remembering of like, oh, I'm getting new inputs, but I get to play with how I respond them, and I'm still the me that I was in my most powerful moment. And now I'm actually noticing other parts of myself, but it doesn't take away the me that I was in the best. It just means that this is a new opportunity to activate those parts of myself. And actually it's like it's your ability to dance with what you're given that makes you great. And yeah, yeah, and this like there's like this, I'm just left with this feeling of this softening and like listen and receive, I just see like the shoulders, like one push and going with it, and acknowledging that like the pain and the uncertainty and the like the witnessing and the feeling of your human feeling sadness and grief and all of the things is part of it, and not making yourself bad or wrong in any moment that you are a certain way, because the truer you are to who you are in each moment, the closer you are to dancing, right? um yeah.
Yeah, I actually feel as though the older versions of me were a statute or a mummified version in some way. Like I've shed these layers to really
Yeah.
return to a more natural and authentic version of who I am. And there's a foreign element with that, like as you grow into that, like it's like being a little baby all over again, I think. And as your body grows and you're
Yes.
like, oh, these limbs are longer now, and what, like that's weird and foreign, and I have to learn how to use them. And like, granted, it's not my physical body doing that right now, it's the emotional, it's the mental, it's the spiritual. But I feel like it is a coming home to myself. I don't feel necessarily lost, but there is for sure, like you hit the nail on the head with the grief. There's a grieving process for what was. But just, yeah, I think the foreign part of it is where in the transition, I feel like I'm fumbling. I can't say I feel lost, but I feel really awkward. Awkward and foreign.
I mean, just like to use your analogy, just like a kid that's growing and suddenly has longer limbs and suddenly, is trying to run and walk and do things for the first time or with a new body. And I think even the wisdom in that is that it's through that practice and that trial and error that we find, that we find the flow and the comfort. Um,
And allowing space for the trial and error, because I'm pretty sure I was the kid that stood up the first time, could stand for hours. My muscles were super strong, and I took the first step with 35 more steps until I reached the couch, and then I sat down. Like I didn't fall and get back up, right? Like this is the perspective as an adult of how we should learn how to grow into things. Like, oh, I should already know how to be there. I wasn't that
yeah.
kid. I fell down and
Ooh.
got back up, but having the grace as an adult to get back up and not let it mean anything about me.
Okay, I just got full body chills because I actually wrote something down for today last night that I completely forgot about, and then you just reminded me of it. And this was such a revelation for me, and for so many people that I work with too. Th- the way that like not enoughness shows up in business, this feeling of like I should have it already, or I should have figured it out already, and the realization of the second I execute something, I already can see the next iteration of it. Like I already can, I'm like working on an offer right now and I did all this media for it and I'm like editing it and I'm putting it together. And I was reflecting on this last night because I was thinking I can already see how I want to make it better. I can already see the next iteration of it. And a less, a past version of me would have looked at that and stopped because it's not perfect, instead of the realization of course you can see a better way, of course you can see the next iteration of you, of course you can see the next iteration of your business, of course you can see the next iteration of life because you just got to the top of a mountain. But we so often go, oh well, now that I can see the next peak, this peak isn't good enough, instead of really just being effing proud of like, I just climbed this mountain and I did this thing that I'd never done before and I created it. And it's like so great. It's like better than where I was. And it's not as good as where I'm going, but it's where I am. And just owning the beautiful messiness of like, this is where I am, and the comfort and the truth of where we are and who we are. And I was thinking about this in another context. She was talking about this with my sister, and she was talking about we were talking about, how I mean, she sort of called me out this one time of like how after I did my hypnotherapy training, I feel like some spiritual ego for sure came in, and I was like, I trained with Marissa Peer, and I know everything about everything, and you know what I mean? Like that was the sense because I felt like I had the superpower because I learned so much, and I talk a lot about the intellectualizing of healing, and there was a degree of that at that point, and but that opened the door to this like deeper, deeper, deeper journey of, more embodiment. And I recognize that I'm in such a more embodied, aware place than I was then, and that there's still that journey of imperfection. I'm sure a future me will be like, you didn't know anything at that point. But I felt shame about that when she sort of first reflected that back to me, but then I realized I was like, yeah, but I had to go through that to get here, right? And so if I had shamed myself then and been like, well, I'm not allowed to be seen, I'm not allowed to share, I'm not allowed to talk about what I think, then I would have never gotten to here because I would have just been hiding the whole time. So it's like even if I look back and, my past self or like things that I did at any point, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't do that again. It can just be that. It can just be like, I wouldn't do that again. I don't believe that anymore. I wouldn't say that now. But it doesn't make me bad. It doesn't make me past me bad. Like past me was, past me made the choices that led where I am now, which I love. And even, it's like I was just so excited is really what was coming through. And I can just see it for that without having to, yeah, put this like painful measure of perfection, and realizing that cycle just loops like again and again and again and again and again and again and again, because wherever you are, you're always going to see the next step. And if seeing the next step means that where you are isn't good enough, then you'll always feel not good enough.
And what if you don't see the next step?
But you do, because if you feel like you're measuring yourself against perfection and frustration, then what's actually happening is a part of you sees what can be better. And instead of allowing yourself to see the wisdom, you're, I would surmise that you're caught in the emotional experience of noticing how it's not good enough rather than noticing how it could be better.
I feel like I I don't know. Maybe I need to spend a little more time self-reflecting, but I feel like the next step sometimes go back to the impatience theme. Like it doesn't come fast enough. I don't see it soon enough. Like why does
Sure,
it take so long?
sure. I totally see what you're saying. So I would bring this back to that mind intellect seeing the next step. Like I don't necessarily mean that next step. Um it's more like you can almost taste the path of growth. It's almost like your being can taste the path of growth, and that can feel like not enoughness, right? It's like in the discomfort of what is, you're only uncomfortable because you know that there's more. In the discomfort of what is, you're only uncomfortable because a deep part of you knows that there's a better experience, a better way, right? And so it's like the deepening into that is what will allow the mind to get out of the way and just see what's coming, see what's coming. Does that resonate? I feel like there's another piece there, but
I feel like I had this whole other like energy thread move through, and it's just like this is the last time I'm telling the story this way. So I'm not really sure that I was necessarily
yes,
processing what you were saying, but it
no,
effectively was doing what was needed to just be like, okay, this is life. If it's falling into that softening and surrendering to
but
surrender and just like the
yeah, but
forward
I
is that way. And what has
that's
happened has got me here and moving to there.
that's it. That's it. That oh my goodness, that's so and yeah, and it's so funny because it's like I feel like our I always say this, it's like our subconscious is so creative. Like one of the greatest like joys of my life is the challenge of constantly figuring out how to outsmart people's subconscious that is getting smarter as it continues to work with me because like as you grow and you evolve, it's like your subconscious also grows and evolve, and there's like still little patterns in it that are trying to do different things that are not supportive, and so it comes up with it gets cleverer in the way that it sabotages you. And what that looks like is that we get ourselves out of the cycle of victimhood, and we're like, oh, I was in victimhood then and I got out of it, and then without realizing it, we start telling another story about why something the way that it is. And I don't know if it doesn't have that same heaviness of victimhood to it, and that's not what I'm saying that you're doing at all, but it's like we don't realize that it's like we just let that story creep in again, and we've like repeated it so many times. And that's actually one of the self-reflection exercises that I love to do. And incidentally, that I'm like was just put in that in one of my upcoming things where it's like we self-reflect on like what is the story that I keep telling. When someone asks me how I am, what are the words that I say? When someone asks me about my life, like what is the story that I tell? I had someone that I worked with a while ago come into my experience, just we connected the other day, and she shared something difficult that was going on for her, like right away out of the blue. And I was like, I wonder how dominant that is in your experience. It's like if that's the first thing that we reach for and say, we might not realize how much we're actually keeping it alive or bringing it in. And it's like that happens over and over and over and over and over. And I think one of the things that actually does this as a disservice is this idea that we will repattern something and then it's just fixed forever, and not recognizing how important it is to just like keep choosing and to keep staying aware, and like the power that you really do have to just be like, okay, that was my story. And like you said, like that's been such a I just got so excited for you because that's been such a powerful moment for me when I've recognized things and been like, and that's the last time I'm ever saying that, or that's the last time I'm ever telling that story, or that's the last time I'm ever telling that story that way, you know?
Yeah, I definitely have leaned into the like you keyed on the heaviness, the responsibility, and like, oh, let me demonstrate my strength through being responsible for all these things in this really tracks back a long way in my story. But that's also part of victimization. I mean, the duality of victimhood. It's still living in that story versus stepping out of it. So I think that is the most freeing aspect of this for me, is that I made my decisions and that path has had so much to learn along the way, but I don't have to carry the weight of it. Like it's just another experience in life. I could choose another experience at any moment.
Yeah.
But I have to
And
choose. Like I have to make that decision and choose. And instead I've just kind of been in this nebulous in between.
yeah, and choose from a place of loving who you've been, even when it wasn't your best self, even when you created pain, even when you experienced pain, and not a separation of who I was bad and now I'm choosing to be good, but an honoring of it was always good. It was always good. Even at my worst, I was always good. I was always lovable. And I can love the part of me that was upset. I can love the part of me that struggled. I can love the part of me that did the wrong thing and said the wrong thing and hurt myself and hurt someone else. And I can just see compassion for the all that I am, because it's actually all me. And when I hold the allness that I am, I can make a different choice because I'm not running away from myself. I'm embracing myself. And from that place of all that I am, that's where you can really change your pattern.
I can feel that. I can feel that in my stomach. And in my head, I'm like, yes to all of that. But in my
Yeah.
stomach, I'm like, embody, but embody it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sometimes takes a bunch of time. And I was thinking about that this morning because I was sitting with something that's been coming up for me, and I decided to use, the field of projection to like find something in myself and shift it. And I like went in, I used the mirror and went in, and I felt into it and I let it go. And then I felt it come back and I was like, "Ugh." And I spent like 3 hours this morning in meditation, just like going in and softening and going in and softening and going in and softening. And seeing the person that I was projecting something onto and saying like all of the things, like all of the horrible things that I feel like I want to say and that I'm mad at this person about, and then going like, what is this about me? Like, what is this showing about me? And what I realized is that I was actually in a way mad at love, which was like quite profound. And so it was like, oh, I can feel this in my body so much. It's like, can I soften? Can I soften into that? And it's almost this like clenching of the heart. Can I like soften into the love? Can I soften into the more love? Softening, softening, softening. And then thinking about something else. And then someone messaged me and I'm responding to something. And then this thought comes into my head and I'm like, yeah, but I'm also annoyed because of this. And then can I come back to it and can I sit with it and can I soften it and not like invalidate my experience, but can I just sit with what is and choose more love and notice that like the frustration and the love are both available to me, and that it's like I don't have to be wrong in order to choose the love, in order to soften into it, in order to soften into it. And I still feel like that thing is not completely resolved or integrated, but it like, it took time, and it's the choice of I'm going to take the time to sit with this because this is the choice that I've made of who to be. And yeah, and honoring that, and not not feeling like the goal, ooh, this is good. Not feeling like the goal is to get rid of it, but rather the goal is to practice being the person that sits with it and chooses the softness.
And that is the real human experience.
That was something I felt that in my whole body. I was like, this is some good shit. Hmm.
And it does take practice for sure.
Yeah. So good. So good. I feel like this is gonna be one of those videos that I send to people. Be like, Go and watch this conversation. The wisdom that you need is at like 39 minutes in.
Right.
The wisdom that I need. I'm going to need this too. I need to go back and be like, what was that thing that I said? And wrote it down. Oh my goodness, this has been so good. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. This is really my intention in creating this space, because there's so many things I feel like that are allowed to come through in conversation and in interaction. And so it's like really like you're allowing this to, we're both allowing this to come through together by the sharing of it. And so I just really appreciate that, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you and doing
Yeah.
this, making yourself available and sharing your energy and your genius.
Oh, thank you. Any final thoughts? Any final reflections before we wrap it up? I feel like this is good. Malada's here watching. She said so good and sent us some hearts.
Ah. Mm, no, I think I'm feeling complete. And usually I've got something and something and something, but feeling complete.
Yeah. I feel like even that last part, I'm gonna go and sit with as well. That like I'm not choosing it to fix it, but I'm choosing it because this is who I'm choosing to practice being. I feel like there's something really, really profound in that. Um, and yeah, again, I just thank you for having this conversation with me. If you enjoyed watching this, please let us know that you were here by leaving a comment. If you caught the replay, let us know. And I'd love if you drop some love for, oops, I just dropped my coffee. If you drop some love for Janessa as well, because she's so fabulous. And I feel like yeah, I remember, I think we met in a collab thing with Mary, and yeah, I just have a beautiful, it's always just such a beautiful experience when you come in and when you share, and I appreciate you so much. So thank you for being here, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, sending you so much love, and